Well, this is my very first video um, that I'm going to make to teach history. The date is, I don't know, April something, 2020. And we have been out of school now since March 16th. So I am doing this not only for my students, but also for friends who said that they would be interested in hearing me and they were probably just being nice, but here we are. I miss teaching. My name is Rebecca Pickle, and I do teach world history in Florence, Alabama. And although I haven't been teaching that long, I have been a love for of history and all things history for many many years, and just took the plunge several years ago and decided to get my teacher's certificate and go into teaching. And so I have a master's, and I love everything that I do every single day, and I miss my kids greatly. So I thought I'd make just a series of short videos, some that will help my students through the rest of the year, and then some for any of those who said that they were interested in anything that I had to say. So, what I would like to say, first of all, is that what I'm going to present is very short, integrated lessons. I'm not going to go full depth into a lot of things. There will be some that I may go full depth in. For the most part, this will be very short little lessons that will just hit the high points. I make no claims that what I tell you is 100%. Um, I shouldn't say 100% factual. Everybody reads and interprets things differently. So if you've read something and interpret it differently from me, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I just ask that you have no problem with what I say, because I interpret things differently also. I try to be as factual as I can and to give my subjections honestly and fairly. I do not bend history to my viewpoint. I feel like history is there and is honest and is capable of telling us if we're willing to listen. So I just want to start every video out saying that if I say something in here you don't 100% agree with, I'm basing it on history's take, not on my take. I try not to view anything that we talk about into my ideas. Okay. So today's lesson is going to be the first one in several dealing with World War One and into World War Two. And if I wanted to sit here and tell you all the causes for World War One, we'd be here all day long. It would be forever and ever and ever and ever that we could talk about this. I love this section. This is one of my favorite sections to teach, and I did get to teach this before we left, and so I was excited about that. But this is for Andrea, a school friend. She wanted to know more about this, and so this one's for her. So if we want to talk about what happened with World War One, we have to actually go back to Napoleon, and I'm not going to go back and rehash all that, but let's just suffice it to say that Napoleon went through a time period where he was rampaging through Europe, and he was taking over countries forcibly. He was putting some of his relatives or close friends into power. And in other countries, he was allowing their leaders to stay in power, or he was appointing leaders to stay in power. And this was all part of his grand plan, his grand empire plan. Now, what he did when he did this is he changed the borders. He changed borders of some countries. Some of them weren't drastic, but some of them were. And then when he was finally taken down and he was exiled, the leaders of Europe met under Clemens von Metternich, and they decided that they were going to change Europe back. Well, they did, but they changed it back to how they wanted it. And the whole thing about it was they wanted to change borders so that borders would be even and that no one country would be larger than another. But the problem with doing that is they were taking away lands that had been part of their makeup for thousands of years. And this did not make the people happy. Under Napoleon, he had brought in this idea of nationalism. And nationalism on paper mimics patriotism greatly. And nationalism on paper looks great. It's when we start saying, you can't be here because you're not part of us, that we start having a problem with nationalism. And that's basically what nationalism is. It's a group of people that have a common language, a common belief system, a common culture. And now we're starting to force people that don't have those same cultures to live with one another. Now, there's also going to be some problems within the Prussian community. Prussia, there's a great animated map that I can link probably in my new YouTube page that will be Pickle History 01 that shows how that the borders changed over time. And if you take a look at Prussia, Prussia was massive, and then it wasn't massive, and then it was massive, and then it wasn't massive. And we get used to calling Prussia Germany, which, okay, it was a lot of little Germanic countries, about estimate around 300 little German kingdoms. They all spoke the Germanic language, and they would be under the Prussian kingdom, or they would be under the Austrian kingdom. And Austria and Prussia switched back and forth quite a bit with power. And that's going to be fun until we get to the Crimean War, which is where Russia comes in and decides that they want some land. And they want the land right around the Black Sea. And they want that because it's going to be an easier port for military and for shipping. And this is kind of where the concert of Europe after Napoleon breaks apart, because Britain and France declare war on Russia. Germany kind of backs Russia. Austria doesn't back anybody. And another thing you need to understand is that all these people were cousins. Like the King of England and the Kaiser in Germany and Russia were all related through Queen Victoria. So they were all cousins. So this is going to cause the Crimean War actually is one of the things that causes a lot of issues within Europe. And it causes Austria to be without any friends. Prussia is becoming a very, very large country at this point, and very, very strong militarily under Otto von Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck pretty much just takes over control away from the Kaiser at this point. And he completely and totally runs the country. It's just during the Franco-Prussian War. He declares war on France because they can't decide who's going to be the leader of Spain. Well, let Spain decide who's going to be the leader of Spain. He takes the entire French army, including Napoleon III, who is the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, captive during this time period. Now, Austria is without friends because they did not come to anyone's side during the Crimean War. They did not back France or Britain, and they did not back Germany or Russia. So they were part of that concert of Europe after Napoleon. They were part of the rebuilding of Europe. They were part of the ones who had designed the borders for a lot of these countries. And now they're kind of left out in the cold because they don't have an ally strong enough, and they need land and they need some money. So they look to they look to Hungary, and they form the Austrian-Hungary alliance. And you can take a look at this map, and this map will kind of show you what I'm talking about. At this point, we no longer have a Prussia. We have a German Empire. Remember I said that there were estimate about 300 small Germanies. So now they formed out of Prussia into a German Empire. And we have an Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now, that would have been fun, except the people that were under the Hungarian flag were not happy about being now under the Austrian flag. And there's a very good reason for that, and it has to do with their culture. Okay, so I'm going to kind of leave it for there. I didn't want to take 25 minutes on each video. So this is number 1 in our video on leading to World War I, and this is Europe after Napoleon. And we will then do one of what happens to actually cause World War I. And yes, that was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, but it goes a lot deeper than that.